Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Batra. We are up to Perek Dalid Mishnah Zayin. Today's Mishnah should be Le'elu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Ranbai, Veliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Chana bat Miriam, Sason ben Ryan, Yoshua ben Shifra, Menuchatam began Eden, Amen, and Abdi ben Chaim Nechaim, V'derefua Shelemav, Daniel Shalom ben Rosa, Betor Shah Chole Israel, and Nachlama Merav ben Amin, Od Sion Chai ben Dvorah. The Mishnah deals with the sale of an entire city. If someone sells a city, Machar Batim, Borot, Shechin, Umarot, he has sold not only the land of the city itself, but also all of the houses that are in the city, along with the pits, ditches, and vaults. Merchatzaot, Vishavachot, he has also sold all the bathhouses and the dovecotes, Beta Badin and the olive presses in the city, Ubeta Shlachin, and he has also sold the city's gardens and orchards. Avalot the metaltalin, but he has not sold any of the movable items left in the city, such as portable ovens and mills, for these can be taken away by the seller and used elsewhere. The Mishnah discusses a sale that is more inclusive. However, if the seller said to the buyer, I'm selling you the city and everything that is inside it, then even if there were animals or slaves left in the city which can move on their own, it can be taken from the city very easily. They're all included in the sale. All movable items that are in the city at the time of the sale are sold with the city if the seller adds this extra clause. Now, when one sells an entire city and he states that he is selling everything in it, we translate that statement literally and award the seller everything that is in the city, even slaves or animals, which move by themselves and require nothing but a simple command for the seller to take them along when he leaves. Certainly, other movable items that would take more effort to remove, such as sacks of grain, are included if the seller left them in the city. Now, we learned in earlier Mishnayot that when someone sells a house or a courtyard, items such as sacks of grain are not included in the sale, even if he states that he is selling the property along with everything that is inside it. The sale of a city is different, however, because one who sells a city means to remove himself completely from the area, and therefore he wishes to include literally everything that he left in the city at the time of the sale. Now, the Mishnah concludes with the ruling about a special type of slave called a santer. The santer served either as the city's watchman or as the city's surveyor who would keep track of the boundaries of each of the properties within the city. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, one who sells the city has always sold the santer along with the city, even if the seller did not add the clause and everything that is in it. Although slaves are usually not included in the sale of the city, unless the extra clause and everything that is in it was added, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel rules that the santer slave is an exception to the rule because his basic function is so essential to the city. And the Rav tells us, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, that Echad does not follow the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. That is in Mishnah Zayin. Now, the final two Mishnot of this chapter discuss what is included when a field is sold. The Mishnah begins by listing several items that are not part of the field itself, but are included in the sale. If someone sells a field, he has sold the stones that are reserved for its needs. This refers to loose stones in the field that have been set aside to be used to build a fence around the field. Although these stones are not attached to the ground and are therefore not part of the field itself, since they were designated to be used in the field and they will not be removed from there, they are considered part of the field. The same law would apply to stones in the field that were designated to be placed upon piles of cut grain to prevent the wind from scattering the grain. If there is a vineyard in the field, the vineyard is included in the sale of the field, and he has also sold the reeds in the vineyard that are reserved for its needs. Grapevines would be tied to peeled reeds that were set into the ground to hold the vines up. These reeds are meant to be left in place holding the vines permanently, so they are included in the sale. And he has also sold the produce of the field that is still attached to the ground at the time of the sale. Although such produce certainly will be removed from the field, as long as it is still attached to the ground, it does not have an identity of its own and is therefore included in the sale. Now, this is so even if the grain was fully grown and ready to be cut down at the time of the sale. And we do not say that the grain that is ready to be harvested is considered as if it were already harvested, as we do in regard to some other laws. The Mishnah now lists several things that are somewhat separate from the field, but are nevertheless sold along with them because they are not important enough to have their own identity. A thicket of reeds that grows within the field is also sold along with it, as long as the area of the thicket is less than a betrova. A betrova, or quarter kav, is a piece of land that measures about 10 amot on each side in size. Such a small thicket is not important enough to be viewed as a separate property and is sold as part of the field. This is so even if the reeds that are growing in the thicket are very thick and sturdy. A watchman's hut whose walls are not plastered with clay is also included in the sale, even if it is attached to the ground, because such a hut is not an important structure. A watchman's hut whose walls are not plastered with clay is not considered a true house, but is rather a temporary, unimportant structure, even if it is attached to the ground, and therefore does not have its own identity and is sold along with the field. Vet charuv she'eno mukav, a young carob tree that has not yet been grafted. Vet betulat shikman, a young sycamore tree, are also included in the sale if they are growing within the field. For young trees of these types are not yet important enough to be considered separate properties. Mature carob trees are very sturdy, and branches of other trees would often be grafted onto them, and the branches of mature sycamore trees would be pruned so that the trees would grow more thickly and the wood could be used for boards. Our Mishnah teaches that young trees of these species are not considered so important, even though they will become important in the future as they age, and therefore they are included in the sale of the field. And even mature trees of other types that are growing in the field, though, are included in the sale automatically, as the Gemara says on page 69b in Masechet Bava Batra. And that is on Abotav today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.